Alright, I do believe we are live. Can you guys hear me? And can you hear this music? And now that I turn the music up even louder, can you hear my voice and can you hear this music? What's happening, Tony? What's happening, Wall? What's happening, Chasing Thoughts? What's happening, Lisa? Alright. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Is the audio coming through? Okay. Are we too loud? Am I exploding anyone's phone? Audio good. Alright. Thank you, Tony. Alright. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about techno. I've put together a specific case in the last couple days, specifically for jamming techno with. I've been doing a little bit of maintenance and shuffling on my large case here, and I've put together a smaller case specifically for techno, and I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to show it to you and talk with you guys about it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just sort of jam around on the system a little bit so you can get a really good idea of the kind of techno that I've set this system up for making. And if you want to hang around and get really deep in with me, I'm going to be pulling all of these patch cables in just a few minutes, and we're going to patch all of this back up from scratch. I'm going to talk about all of the modules along the way, exactly what everything is doing and how I'm using it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just jam out with the system a little bit so you guys can hear what kind of techno this system is put together for putting out. I'm going to turn the volume back up here. What's happening, Sky Tortoise Ferryman? What's happening, Tobe Illusion? All right, there you go, Tony. Right on. All right. I wanted to make a system that would allow me to get kind of this dark techno sound. There's a lot of things that I want to go over today, so I'm probably going to be doing an awful lot of talking. But for those of you who don't like these super long streams, no worries. I'll be going through after the stream, and I'll be putting timestamps in so that you can reference certain points of information in the video if you'd like to. All right. So I want to start off by saying that this is by no means like me trying to say this is the be-all, end-all techno system and these are the best modules for techno. Nothing like that. This is just a system that I have put together, based on what I've learned over the past few years on trying to put together a case that would allow me to literally just, do what I've seen a lot of other Eurorackers do, which is kind of turn their system on and without any preparation and without any, previous planning, just turn it on and just go and be able to just jam and create, grooves and techno, like ebb and flow and just totally live jam without all of this preparation. Like for instance, the like 20 or 15-minute live sets that you've seen me do on this channel with like the large Eurorack system. Those take me a week, sometimes even up to 2 weeks in terms of planning, sorting out the patterns before time, getting my samples picked out for the modules that are going to be using samples, all of that kind of stuff. And what I really wanted to do was to have a case, that would allow me to not worry about any of those things. Just turn it on and be able to control all of these sounds in real time. Turn the volume back up here and jam a little bit more on this before we unpatch it, you guys. So if you guys like this kind of techno and you want to see all of the modules specifically that I'm using to create this kind of, music, and how we're patching it together and my, thoughts behind all of this, stick around because that's exactly what we're just about to get into. I'm going to just turn the volume up on this and have a sip of coffee. All right, fantastic. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, everyone, for the support. All right, let's get into this, shall we? All right, let's see here. Go ahead and turn the clock off here. Okay, first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and just turn the master volume down so we don't get any weird clicks or pops. And I'm just going to go ahead and unpatch everything today and start setting these cables over to the side. If anyone has any questions today, whether they be Eurorack related or, I don't know, Digitac related or just music production related in general, please feel free to go ahead and drop those in the chat along the way, and I will do my best to answer those. Let's see here. All right, so it's sort of been my goal for, I don't know, probably my entire, time working with electronic music gear since about, 1987, when I started off working with a Roland S50 sampler and a Roland TR-505 drum machine as the sequencer for that sampler. It's sort of been a goal, to be able to do exactly what we're going to be doing today. To have a system where without any planning whatsoever, I would be able to just, turn that on and immediately be able to just start making music and ebb and flow and jam, along and have movement and have, sections and have that jam actually evolve and go different places. And I've owned, just about every groove box there's been over the years. And I've gotten into Eurorack a couple of years ago. And boy, I'll tell you guys, it's been a lot of hours of study and a lot of trying to figure out the details for how to create exactly what I want to create. And I think that's, I'm going to get off on another side quest here, and I think that's a common theme with Eurorack that maybe turns people off to it or confuses people. You can literally do just about anything you could think of, so it's really specific to exactly what you want to do. A lot of people want to build a really large synthesizer, they're not interested in drums. A lot of people would like to just, have some really specific and independent control over their drums and maybe want to use the Eurorack for that. Some people like to use the Eurorack to run their external gear into and use like the effects and the filters in Eurorack. So there's so many ways you can approach it, from just a synthesizer to just a large drum machine to just a large effects box. And what this is being put together as today is this is being put together specifically with this intention in mind, to make this kind of techno, and to be able to do it, once the system is patched, I can turn it off, and then I can just literally turn it back on again, the next day, press play, and immediately just start, jamming and creating techno in real time. Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna have one more sip of water before we get started into this, you guys. And I'm going to start by just kind of going over in a general way the modules that are in the case right now. Oh, congratulations on the BIA, Toballusion. All right. Yeah, this is my studio buddy. This is Opie. We used to have 4 little dogs, but they all were very old because they were all from the same litter. So now this is the last one of those. His name is Opie, and he's my studio buddy. He's really, really old, and mostly he just likes to sleep in here. Okay, let's talk about these modules. Most importantly, I think in pretty much any system is your ability to clock and reset your sequencers. Now, any sound that is going to play is going to need some way to trigger that sound to play, and that's where the sequencers and the clock come into play. And for those of you who might have watched, some of my tutorials on this kind of thing already, you know that like the way that I'm using the clock and the reset signal to get a whole bunch of different sequencers all running in the same time and knowing when that downbeat is. In this case, I'm using the Circuit Happy, or maybe that's Happy Circuit. I'm not sure. I always get that wrong, and I apologize, Ed. This is the, so it's the Circuit Happy, or the Happy Circuit, I'm not sure. It's the ML2, and this is the clock generator. And you'll see over here at the upper left of this module, it's sort of just flashing right now. And it's got a little wireless symbol here. Now, the bonus about this module is not only will it generate the clock system and a reset system for my case here to get all of the sequencers knowing when the downbeat is, but it's also its own Wi-Fi network, and it's sending out a Wi-Fi signal that I can connect to with any other piece of gear in here that has a wireless Ableton Link connection. So I can wirelessly get this case in sync with either of my desktop computers using Ableton Link sync, or I can get it in sync with an iPad using that as well. So I could wirelessly get this in sync with something like MyRack or Beatmaker 3 to add more sounds, if I want to get more robust with this as well in the future. And I think, hey, what's happening, Omri? And I think that's one of the things that I like to, push as well. Like I'll be able to do this like sometime down the road, and that sort of like pushes me into creating things that are maybe a little bit more robust than they should be, and not just trying to keep it simple. And so that's really what I've done here is I've really just tried to keep it simple so that what's directly in front of me is all stuff that I can just immediately interact with. So many things along this journey have gotten me to this point. There's so much learning how to connect the modules together, how to get, different sequencers in sync with each other. And so many people have like said little tidbits of information that really, really stuck with me along the journey. When Travarsi was here jamming with me a few weeks ago, we were talking about, sequencers and song mode specifically. And she said to me, I am the song mode. I don't need a song mode in my, gear, in my sequencers. I am the song mode. I will decide where the song goes and when it goes there. I am the song mode. That's a really powerful thought. And the more I thought about it, the opposite, is how I've been working my large system where I'm doing all this preparation and making like 16 patterns for drums, making like 16 patterns for melodics, like all this stuff. That takes like a week or two of preparation. I can't just turn it on and just jam it out, right? And when I'm building a patch or a set like that, I can't just turn it on and jamming out because the system's already full. So that pull, that desire to just be able to turn something on and without any preparation at all, just start jamming and just start making music really is what this is about. Another really important piece of this journey was a live stream that I watched, I don't know, maybe a week and a half ago from Omri Cohen. Omri's still in the chat, so I really want to thank him for this. He used the Bifaco kick-all module as a bass instead of a kick drum. And I don't know why, but for some reason, I hadn't really thought to try to use the module as a bass. I had only used it as a kick drum. It's actually the first kick drum module that I got specifically for making kick drum sounds. And it sounds really great, but when I try to use it in my tracks as a kick drum, it just never really did exactly what my mind wanted it to do. So it's kind of been sitting in my reserve case, not being used for a while. And when I saw Omri use it as a bass, it sounded exactly what I would want, like my techno, bass to sound like in my head. And it really gave me this idea. Okay, well, if that's a bass and not a kick drum, what else could I put into this case and how would I actually use it by rearranging these modules? And like, this has become such an amazing sounding bass in this case. And I think you guys will agree. So seriously, thank you to Omri for that. Okay. Now, we've got so many different sequencer modules that we need to get in time with each other. We've got the clock here, which is sending out a clock signal and a reset signal, okay? This is, again, the Happy Circuit ML2 module. What we're going to do, actually, let me just talk a little bit more about some of these before I start patching. Is right next to that, I've got a quad passive multiple. And what this allows me to do is just copy any signal that I feed into it to get multiple copies of that signal so that I can send them out through the case as needed. So why would I need something like that? Well, I have a whole bunch of sequencers here, so we need a whole bunch of different copies of our main clock signal, and we also need a whole bunch of different copies of that reset signal so that all of the sequencers will know when the downbeat is and start in time together. So I've got this quad passive multiple here from Rides in the Storm. It doesn't take power, it's why it's called passive multiple. And then I've got up here, I've got another passive multiple, and this one is from IntelliGel, so no power on this one either. So what I can do is I can take our main clock signal out of the ML2 and I can route that into one of these multiples so that I now have different copies of that clock signal that I can send out throughout the case, because I've got a lot of sequencers here that will need to get going. I can then, I'll take a longer cable here. I can then go ahead and take that reset signal from our main master clock here, and I can patch that into a multiple. So now I can get a bunch of different copies of the reset signal, and I can get a bunch of different copies of our main clock signal. Now, the Circuit Happy ML2 does, I'm sorry, hold on, you guys, I'm so embarrassed. I don't want to say this wrong throughout the entire sketch. So let me just grab, it's Circuit Happy. Circuit Happy ML2 is the name of this module. It's got a plus and a minus here so that I can adjust the tempo up and down in real time as well. And if I connect this to the web server wirelessly, I can configure this module as well. Okay, so next to this, we've got 3 golden shower sequencers from Mazatron. And what these are, this is my favorite rhythmic sequencer, okay? And what this is it's an 8-step trigger signal, sequencer, excuse me. And we can roll this knob and get any variation of any combination of 8 steps that you could think of. There's 256 possible combinations of 8 steps in this module. And what I really like about this is for live jamming. We can just roll the knob and change the triggers to any pattern we want. Next up, I've got 2 Euclid sequencers from 2HP, and these are just really small Euclidean trigger sequencers. And what a Euclidean sequencer is it's going to take like a measure, right? Like 16 notes, okay? And you're going to tell it how many notes you would like to fill in of those 16 steps, and it's going to do its best to divide those notes among the 16 steps in an equal fashion. Now that's a really lame way for describing what these do, but that's basically what these sequencers are doing. They're spitting out Euclidean patterns, and I can change the length of these patterns and how many steps they are in real time with these knobs here, so that it's really easy to change the rhythmic sequence coming out of these 2 sequencers. Okay, so I've got 5 rhythmic sequencers here, 3 golden showers and 2 Euclids from 2HP. Next up, we have the D&I Pro dot sequencer. And what this is it allows me to, program 3 different channels of trigger signals to trigger my drums and samples and whatnot. And then I can put this into a mute mode if I want and turn all of those tracks on and off in real time, which is really handy in a case like this as well. You really need control over each of these sounds individually to be able to, move in real time and ebb and flow with the patch. Let's move over here actually to some of these drums that I'm using as well, because for techno, it's kind of, there are some things that are really easy to know that you're going to need. We're going to need a really solid module for kick drums. We're going to need something really solid for hi-hats. I don't usually use a lot of snare drums in techno, so we're going to need something for claps. And I love to use ride cymbals in techno, so we're definitely going to need something for rides. So that's kick drum, clap, hi-hat, and ride we know we're going to need for sure. And how I've approached that is I'm using the Noise Engineering Bassimilis Iteratus Alter, the BIA, as my kick drum here. I'm using the Erica Synths Hi-Hats D module for the hi-hats. And what's cool about this one is that not only does it have a closed hi-hat, but you can actually use 2 different sounds at the same time through this module, an open hat and a closed hat. I'm actually using this in a really simple way where I'm just using it as the closed hat. But we have a decay control for the closed hat, so I can actually open the closed hat. So I can actually turn that one hat into a closed hat if I have the decay down, or an open hat if I have the decay up. So I find that really nice for jamming in real time. We can change the tuning of the hi-hat and the decay of that hi-hat, helping with that ebbing and flowing of the patch. Next up, for originally I got for like ride cymbals is this cymbals module from Erica Synths, but I'm actually using it more as a percussion module than a ride module. It has a whole bunch of like pairs of crash and rides in it, and we can select which pair we're working with the knob in the upper right. So I can actually get more than just one type of sound out of this module by changing which pair of ride and crash is being triggered. I'm currently just using the ride. I'm not using the crash. So I have, two more drum sounds that I could somehow try to sequence if I could think of a way to do that. The open hat on this module and the crash on this module. So what I'm doing is I'm able to take, the kick, the hats, and the ride, and I'm able to route those into a little mixer here from Dopefer. It's even got some panning on it, so I can run the drums in stereo if I want, and pan the cymbals a little bit to the left, and maybe like another sound a little bit to the right. Okay, so where am I getting that clap sound that I just talked about? We're getting the clap sound from a sample in the Squarp Rample, but the beauty of the Rample is that it plays back 16-bit mono samples, but you can load up to 12 samples into each of its 4 different sample slots. So I actually have multiple ride sounds in here, and I have multiple clap sounds in here, but they're on the same track inside of the Rample. And one of the neat things about the Rample is you've got a CV input for each track. You can even assign all 4 to like the same track if you want to. And I've got these CV inputs assigned to scroll through the sounds that are on these individual channels. And what does that mean exactly? Well, I can take this 410 module. This is an attenuator module, or a little mixer if you want to use it that way, from WMD devices. But one of the magic things about this module is that if you don't plug anything into it, if you just take an output from one of these outputs, you now have a 0 to 5 volt offset on the fader. And what I can do is I can plug the output of this module into the CV input of the Rample, and then I can use these faders here to switch between the sounds that I've got in the Rample. So I've got a ride sound and I've got a clap sound in the Rample, and I actually have, like I think 5 or 6 different ride sounds and 5 or 6 different clap sounds. And when we get going, I can change those sounds by just moving the fader on the 410 here from WMD, a really powerful combination. I could also change the samples, using the controls on the Rample itself, but I'm kind of saving those to be able to have individual pitch control of these sounds in a really convenient, easy way. If I just set this to pitch, then I can use the knobs above the sample slots to scroll the pitch of any of these samples. So I can change the ride sample or the clap sample, and I can change the pitch of the ride or the clap as well with this little configuration. Really powerful. Okay, next up here, we've got like a noise tool, 1U module here from IntelliGel, and this just allows me to get some white noise. I like to use white noise as kind of like a background percussion a lot of the time, and so I can take like a straight white noise signal, and we could route that into maybe like a little low pass gate here from IntelliGel, just a little tiny module. And then if I put a trigger signal into this low pass gate, it opens that gate a little bit, kind of makes a plucked sound, and it will let that noise come through. It's kind of like almost like a plucky percussive type of noise sound, and that's kind of fun to use as well. Next up, we have this big old sequencer here. This is the Synth Rotec Sequence 8, and it is an 8-step melodic sequencer. And what I can do is I can just roll any of these 8 knobs here, and these are going to adjust the pitch of those 8 steps of the sequence. I can take an output of the pitch from this sequencer here, and I can route that into a quantizer module. And what a quantizer module does is it helps us keep things a little bit more musical, and it's going to help us snap these values to a musical scale. So for instance, I like to write often in the key of F minor, so I can snap this, to the key of F minor. Um, Next up, we've got, let's see here, we've got the Bifaco Kick-All module, which I'm using as the actual bass sound. And this is really awesome because I can morph this in real time between a square and a sine wave, so we can get like a really mellow, chilled out techno bass. And when I roll this up towards like more of a square wave, it becomes more of an aggressive sounding techno bass. So it gives us a little bit of, that variation that we can do in real time, which is really important when you're trying to ebb and flow with like techno patches. So that's my bass voice, okay, just that kick all. And we don't need an envelope for it because it already has a control for decay right on it. So I can control that length of the sound right with the module. I don't need a separate envelope or envelope generator module, which makes this even more handy. Down here, we've got the braids, the Mutable Instruments braids module, but this one is made from Blue Lantern modules. It's a little bit skinnier than the original braids module. And I've been running that into this wasp filter from Dopefer. I think these two pair together really nicely. One of the nice things about this wasp filter is it's not just a low pass filter, but it's sort of like a low pass, band pass, and high pass filter. And depending on how you adjust the mix of low pass and high pass and whatnot, you can get quite a few different tones out of this one. I think it really works well in this sort of a system. I've also got a little tiny modulation module here called Sloth. And what this is doing is just putting out some really slow, gentle, random type modulation. I haven't really been using this in the patch yet, in the case yet per se, but it's there if I want to use it. Lastly, we have this dual effects module from Erica Synths, which is really handy because it's got two different effects algorithms that we can use individually. So I can put, for instance, an effect on the drums, and then I can maybe save the other effect to use on our melodic sound. Okay, that's pretty much what this case is about, and that's an overview of the modules. I'm going to check in with the chat before we get going. If anyone has any questions on anything that I've just gone over, please feel free to drop those in the chat, and I will do my best to answer those right. All right. Hey, what's happening, Martin? All right. All right, let me just get a sip of water. What do I do with the water? Here it is. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start patching this together, and I'm going to explain that every step of the way as well. But I just want to say again, for anybody who might have missed me saying it in the beginning, this is by no means, me trying to say this is the best techno system ever or anything like that. I'm not trying to pitch these modules to you. I'm not trying to say this is the way to go and this is the ultimate system. Nothing like that. This is just a system that I've put together that I'm really excited about because for the first time, I'm 48, you guys. For the first time in my life, I'm literally able to just walk up to this system, turn the power on, press play, and just go with no pre-planning whatsoever. And that for me is like, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. As a synth geek, this kind of stuff is my bag. And to be able to have a system that I can connect with in such a way that makes sense to me in such a way that I can interact with it, like hopefully we're about to, is something really, really special and really, really powerful. All right. Yeah, the Dopefer is just a sub-mixer, basically, allowing me to mix all of the drum sounds together before they go into the... I'm using the black output from Erica Synths here as like the way to get all of the sounds into one spot. So I only have 4 inputs on this module. This is so much more condensed than I'm used to working with in the in the large system across the way here. Where literally I've got with this system I've got so many options that it's very difficult to get into a flow that I've been able to get into with this system here. Another thing that really keyed this off for me is, I don't know, maybe about a week or so ago. I'm kind of bad with time because this is really all I do. So I don't necessarily have a great grip on like how long ago things were because It's all just this for me, really. But the last live stream that I did where I was just late night Eurorack patching, I start in the big system. It's about I want to say about a week and a half ago. I started off with like just a pad going, and in about 45 minutes, I was able to put enough content together that it suddenly kind of hit me that I wasn't patching anymore, that I was literally just jamming. And that wasn't my intention with that patch. And I completely let go. I let go of the idea of, I'm patching right now, and I just started jamming with that. If you guys missed that live stream, but you're into, Euro racking in real time, definitely check out my last late night live stream, because I got into this vibe and suddenly I was just jamming and it was just magic and things were just happening. And I wasn't really having to think about it so much. And I really hadn't gotten into that sort of state of flow with the Eurorack before. I had gotten close, and that was a really special turning point for me. So when putting this together, I really thought, about that feeling and the idea of, what I'm going to need and what I'm not going to need specifically, because there's so many limitations with a small system like this. Like, I don't have filters for every sound. I don't have a whole lot of effects to route things through. I've got no EQ. It's very different and it's very condensed and it's very purposeful. Okay. Let's go ahead and put this together then. What we're going to do, I think, is we're going to start by getting all of our sequencers ready to go, knowing what the clock is and knowing when what the reset signal is, so that everything will start and stop at the same time. I'm taking the master clock from our Circuit Happy ML2 module, right? And I'm routing that master clock into a multiple here, a passive multiple, so that I can take multiple clock signals and I can route them into all of my sequencers. Sorry if you guys are hearing that fan noise in the background. It is very, very hot in Southern California today, and I have got the air conditioner on low in here. Okay, so we've got 3 different versions of the clock signal going into these 3 different sequencers. I'm going to need another version of the clock signal to go into that Euclid. And I'm going to need yet another version of that clock signal to go into this Euclid. I'm still going to need 2 more versions of the clock signal, so I'm going to need to bring this back up to the top row, so that now I've got, more versions of that clock signal that I can send out to the other modules. We're going to start by sending this one to the, let's go ahead and send this to the clock input of the dot here, and then I'm going to need a longer cable to go a little bit further and get this clock signal into the Synth sequence 8. So clock in, there we've got that clocked. Okay, I think I'm going to route this through a little bit more there. Yeah, okay, cool, clock in. So now I've got the clock being routed to all of the different sequencers. You can see why I need all these multiples, right? Because to get the clock and the reset signal is quite an intensive process. We can go ahead and start working that reset signal now. So I'm not going to reset the sequence 8 is the thing. I'm going to be able to, let's talk about that. I'm going to leave this knowing when the downbeat is. I don't know how else to say that. So that the bass line itself can be a little bit more, sliding around our pattern. And one of the things that's really neat about this sequencer is you can take the reset input, and instead of sending that, from our master reset, you can send that from one of the other steps. And excuse me, now you've created like a 6-step pattern, because it will re-step instead of going to step 7. Or you could plug this into 8, and now we've got a 7-step pattern, because it will reset on step 8 instead of playing step 8. If I want a 4-note pattern, I can plug the reset into 5, and it will play the first 4 notes. Then when it gets to 5, it's going to reset. So in real time, depending on which one of these outputs I plug it into or don't plug it into and let it play all 8 steps, we can shift our bass line in real time while we're jamming jamming, between an 8-step bass line, a 7-step bass line, a 6, etc., etc. So I'm just sort of leaving this cable here. It's patched into the reset. And again, so if I press play now, it'll play all 8 steps, and we can, address that as we need to. Okay, so I'm going to patch this reset signal here into the reset of the D&I Pro sequencer. So that one's taken care of. Okay, now we're going to get the reset signal into both of our 2 HP Euclid modules. So we're going to plug that in. Again, the clock and the reset is just such an intensive part of all of this kind of stuff, because this is really, this is 4/4 bass music, and we're not trying to do, something other than that. We're trying to do that, and we need everything to have that really tight sync and know, when each other's downbeats are, so that they will be in that really tight sync. So now we just need to get the reset signal into all 3 of these golden shower sequencers. So we're going to go ahead and start by duplicating that reset signal to the next row so that I can get 4 more copies of it now. Okay, and here's one. We're going to put this into the reset of our first golden shower sequencer. We're going to take the second. We're going to run that into the second reset of the golden shower sequencer. And actually, I'm running low on these now, so let's take the reset and let's reset. Let's just use one of these today then. I'll leave that patched, I think, anyhow, just in case. This is too long. Let's grab a different one. And whoops, I'm actually still doing that wrong. I think I am. Yep, I wanted to plug that into the golden shower. Okay, great. So I was wrong about that. We have plenty of resets. Okay, good deal. So if I'm not mistaken, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When I press play now, yeah, all of our sequencers are now playing, and they know when the downbeat is. So our dot sequencer is in time with the golden shower, etc. There's no, light reference per se on the 2 HP Euclids, but from experience, we can pretty much trust that they are going in time with the rest of our sounds. Okay, so what we're going to do now is let's go ahead and make it so we can hear this kick drum, shall we? Let's just make a 4 on the floor kick drum, and let's use the golden shower from Mazatron to accomplish that. And what I'm going to do is just put in a 4 on the floor trigger. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 on the floor trigger pattern real fast here. Whoops, there we go. Whoops, almost. I'm still not quite right. And bear with me for just 1 second. There it is. All right. Now I can go ahead and route the output of that up here into the trigger input of the BIA. And this is our kick drum here. Okay, fantastic. So we can see on the kick drum module that it's starting to light up here when it gets triggered. And that's what we want. And basically, I'm just going to be routing all of the drums into this little dope for mixer right here. So I can take the output of the kick drum, and I can route that into the very first input here of our dope for module. Now, I'd like to be able to run this in stereo, and that's where the black output from Erica really shines here. Because what we can do is we've got a left out into the left in on channel 4. Let me grab a cable here, and then we've got a right output from our drum module into the right input of this output of this black output from Erica Synths. Now I can use the pan controls here, and I can get a little bit of panning control over those drum sounds if I want to. So now I can turn the master volume up, and we're banging away that kick drum. All right. Now, can you guys hear that okay? And did I just explode anyone's phone? Are we doing okay with the level there? Just let me know. What let's do is let's go ahead and let's get our second golden shower sequencer to do an open hi-hat part. So let me go ahead and set it for that. Let's see here. Almost. There we go. And we can take an output from that sequencer, and we can route that up to the closed hi-hat on the hi-hats D module from Erica Synths. And we can see now that that one has a little tiny LED on it here that is lighting up when it is receiving the trigger signal. Fantastic. we can go ahead and just route the output of this module here into the input number 2 of the Doepfer, and now we can hear our hi-hat coming through. And I've got, volume on that hi-hat, and I can control, the decay of that hi-hat. I can control the tuning of this hi-hat. And I really like being able to just use the one knob to turn this from a nice tight, closed hat to just a big old open hat. And one of the things I like to do is to get it so it's a little bit open, so it's got a little bit of, tone there. And then I like to mess with the pitch a little bit and then close the hi-hat. So I'll roll the pitch in 1, 2, 3, and then I'll just roll the decay back down and I can close it. A little bit later, when I'm ready to have an open hat part again, I can just open it up. And I can change that tuning wherever we want it, depending on where the patch is, All right. What let's do then is go ahead and add this cymbal module here. Actually, before I go any further, one of the neat things that I've got set up is I'm using the DivKid Mutes module, and this is going to allow me to be able to turn 4 drum sounds on and off in real time at any time during the patch. So rather than running our kick drum trigger directly into the kick drum module, let's run it into this Mutes module, and then we can take an output there and run that into the trigger input. And we can do the exact same thing with this hi-hat. We can run the input into this Mutes module, and then we can run the output here into the input of the hi-hat module. And now I've got control over both of these sounds. I can turn them on or off using these switches here. Let me show you what I mean by that. Didn't quite get them in time. There we go. So now all I have to do is turn them on or off with these switches over here. Being able to turn at least some of our tracks on and off in real time during the jam is a really, really essential thing to have. All right, I'm just going to use one of these little ties here to get. And we can adjust the kick drum in real time as well. We've got like tuning, all sorts of stuff. I can adjust the attack on that and make it a little bit more tame. I can also roll this attack and kind of get it really dirty like it is there. So we've got a little bit of control over what the kick drum can do. I also kind of like to flip these switches to the top every now and again for a turnaround. You know what I mean? Kind of a funny little, sound we get there. Okay. So you got a quick question in the chat. Let me just check in and see if I can figure this out. MIDI out from the Digitag to Poly 2. Yeah. And then take MIDI out to Erica MIDI trigger input. Well, you could definitely, what I would do in that case, if you want to use both of those modules together, if you want to use the Erica Synths MIDI to trigger and the Poly into Poly 2 together, what I would do, see if I have one out that I could grab maybe, yeah, is I'm taking a MIDI Solutions Quadra through out from the back of my Digitakt, okay? It allows me to plug in the MIDI out, to just one input, and then I can get 4 different copies of that MIDI signal. And so what I would do is I would route, one of the Digitakt's MIDIs, I would route that, but that's going to have, I would still use 5-pin MIDI is I guess what I'm saying, is I would use 5-pin MIDI for both of those. Because you could route the 5-pin MIDI into the MIDI to trigger, and you could also route it, but keeping in mind that you've got 8 triggers that you can trigger from your Digitakt, and that's all, 8 MIDI channels right there. Doesn't really leave you a lot of extra MIDI channels to send MIDI to the Poly 2. Just something to keep in mind. But you could absolutely get both of them going at the same time, sure. All right. What let's do is go ahead and get the bass going at this time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the neat things about this Synth Rotec Sequence 8 is that it has 3 different outputs, and we have 3 different attenuverters as well, so we can sort of control the range of these voltages that are coming out of this sequencer module. So we're going to take the first row, this is the first sequence of pitch information, and we're going to put that into the CV input of this quad quantizer here, which again is going to kind of take the voltages from the sequencer and sort of snap those to a more musical scale. We're going to go ahead and take the CV out from that, which is the pitch information, and we're going to route that pitch information into the tuning of our Bifaco kick-all, which we're using as a bass today. Now we just need to actually trigger the Bifaco so that it knows, when to play these notes. And the quad quantizer here from Tenderfoot Electronics gives us a nice duplicate of the trigger signal that is being generated here from from our sequencer. It gives us kind of a duplicate of that, which I can then run that trigger signal into the kick-all. I don't know if you can see here, but the kick-all has a little LED here, which is lighting up now and letting us know that that is going. And what we can do is we can go ahead and just route this now into our mixer. We should be able to start hearing the bass. Absolutely. And it's already sounding, kind of melodic, again, because we're already running it through a musical scale. So one of the awesome things about using this module for bass is we can shift the bass sound in real time. Almost sounds like we're opening up a filter, but we're just changing the waveform of the bass from a sine to a square wave. The square gets a little louder, so, whoops, I'm on the wrong input there. I want to be on input 1 for the bass. Yeah, so I can roll that input around in real time as well. So when I'm changing this from like a sine to a square, I can kind of mess with the volume and sort of keep it where it needs to be. Hopefully, Sometimes it's a little difficult on headphones. Something else that we can do with the Bifaco kick-all is we can move this bend knob and get the bass a little more aggressive. Right? Open that hi-hat up a little bit, right? So I hope you guys can see or hear, just how easy it was for us to actually get a groove going once we got our sequencers, all in time. All this is just bass, hi-hat, and kick drum. Now, I want to show you guys what I meant earlier about, being able to change the amount of steps in our bass line. So currently it's playing all 8 steps, but if I plug in our, trigger to the reset at like a 7, now we're getting a 6-step bass line. So kind of evolving in a different way here. All right, I'm going to turn the volume down just a tiny bit and check in with the chat and make sure that I'm not missing anything. Which case is that? That's a great question, Omri. This, I don't know the name of the specific case, but the company is MDLR, and this is like really, really well built. I want to say they're from Australia. Don't quote me on that, but I'm 90% sure I'm right on that. And one of the things that I love about this case, and one of the main reasons that, this was the first case, rather, my very first Eurorack case, and I really wanted to make sure that I had this room, for 1U modules as well. I know there's not a lot here now, but this gives me, the ability to kind of add, like if I, find that, after I start jamming with this particular setup a little bit longer, as I find that, oh, maybe I just really need that one more filter or that one more reverb or that one more, something. It'll give me space to, to be able to put something like that in here as well. You can see I've also got 2 blanks in here for just a tiny little bit of extra room that I haven't quite figured out, what would be the best, thing to go there per se. So I've got this tiny little bit of room to continue shuffling things around still as well, and that's really, really helpful. All right, cool. I'll turn this back up again. Kick has too much FM on it. Well, the kick itself doesn't have any FM on it per se. This is just its very default setting of the BIA module from Noise Engineering. I can change the decay on it. We can make that a lot, tighter or shorter kick if we want to. We can even use this for kind of like turnarounds in the music when we want to thin it out a little bit for that ebb and flow, and then bring it back up again. But that's a really interesting point that Ed brings up, you guys. And this is a point about, specifically, about module choice. And this is like one of the things I think that makes it really difficult for people to get into Eurorack. For instance, we're talking about things in a really basic, way here. The tools that we're going to need. We're going to need a module for kick. We're going to need a module for hats. We're going to need something for like rides and percussion. But when you go to actually look at the modules, there's a website called modulargrid.net, I think, which literally lists all the modules that are in existence. And you can go to that website and you can go, okay, let's start figuring this out. Let's look for a kick drum module. And you type in, kick drum module, and you're going to get like hundreds of, different kick drum modules that are going to come up. And they're all going to be made by different people. Those people have all different standards of quality and, what sounds good to them. And then you have to sit there and figure out, well, which is the one for me? Start listening to, examples of modules and videos and find something where, that particular sound of that module is, drawing you in and makes you, want to work with that exact module. There's tons of different, options for kick drums. So if you're not, vibing the sound of one, there's always going to be another one right around the corner that's going to sound a little bit different. And that's sort of the beauty of, modular, is that everyone is going to pick a little bit different, modules, meaning everyone's system is then going to sound a little bit different and then really specific to them as well. All right. So I can make this bass a little bit more chilled by bringing the bend down on it. We can make it a little more techno-y, a little bit more laid back as well by bringing it a little bit more towards the sine and less towards the square. Kind of just bring it back and let the frequency range have room for some of these other sounds. All right, let's go ahead and add another sound at this time. Let's use the third Mazatron Golden Shower. No, let's go ahead and use this 2 HP Euclid, in fact. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this to trigger this sound up here from the cymbal module. And I don't want to really refer to this as like a ride or a cymbal, because I'm really using the sounds from this module more as percussion. And you'll hear what I mean when we get that going. Let's go ahead and route the output here of this sequencer into I'm going to use the ride trigger. So again, both of these modules can trigger 2 different sounds, and I'm only using each of them to trigger one sound. Okay, let's see here. Let's put some of these steps in so we'll get some a little bit of, and again, these are Euclidean sequencers, these 2 HP sequencers down here. So we can see a tiny little LED on the cymbals module. We'll start, I don't know if you can see that on the stream, but start lighting up to let us know that there's a sound coming through. And what I like to do is I like to give, this sort of percussion a little bit more life. So we're going to route the out of this, instead of directly into the mixer, we're going to go ahead and route this into the Synths dual effects, so that when we get this sound in the mix, we can also put a little bit of effect on that. We're just going to go ahead and route the sound here back to my drum mixer, because this is my drum percussion here. Alright, and that's coming in on input level 3. I'm going to change that panning there. And maybe change the pattern as well. That sounds cool. So I have control over that volume. Whoops, that's 3. Yeah, on 3 here. This is the... Yeah, so there's our main hat. We can open that a little more. Then I have control over the new volume right here. Maybe we'll pan those sounds a tiny little bit, you know, away from each other as well. Let's see, if I turn off that open hat, so we're only hearing the sound coming from the cymbals module. Now you can hear what happens if I put a little bit of effect on that. Just kind of using a weird delay effect here. And we can bring that effect in and out as needed to make that sound a little bit more interesting if we want to. Hey, what's happening, Jamie? That's a great suggestion. We got Window Liquor 808 in the chat with a great suggestion. He's suggesting 2 Pico drum modules from Synths for beginners. And the reason he's suggesting that is because they come with a ton of samples, and you can play 4 samples at a time with those, and it's only going to take up 6 HP in your system. That is an absolute great suggestion, and those are really cool modules. I believe you can even load your own sounds into those, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you could just jam a whole night with the case. I'm trying to get, that's just it. I'm not trying to come at this stream today like, you know, I'm a super pro and this is my badass system that will just, you know, I'm just trying to show you guys what I've put together and how easy it is to jam with these modules once we get them all, you know, connected together. Are we doing okay on the volume? Am I getting too loud there? Just let me know. All right. Back off that effect a little bit on that percussion sound there. And don't forget that, you know, we can roll the tuning on these sounds anytime we want. If they get a little bit too loud, we can turn them down or turn them up as needed. It's really nice to have that individual control with this mixer here. I see. And what let's do then is let's go ahead and get... I have samples, you know, that I'm loading, that I've already loaded into the Rample. So let's go ahead and get those into the mix. Let's get the clap going, because that should be relatively simple. I've already got a clap pattern programmed into the D&I dot, so we don't even need to worry about programming anything today. All I need to do is just route that trigger into the Rample so we can actually trigger the sample. And I'm going to take an output from the Rample. The Rample will let you take each sound individually, or will let you take a mix of all 4 sounds as to one output. And that's what we're going to be doing today to keep everything simple. We're just going to be routing this into the input 2 on the black output. So we've got our drums being routed into 3 and 4. We've got the bass being routed into input 1. And now we've got our other samples being routed into input 2. This still leaves me input 3 to route something else, so we can use that for our melodic sound in just a moment. Alright, let's see here. Alright, so before I was talking about how I have it set up so I can use these faders to change the sounds inside of the Rample. Let me show you what I mean by that. If we don't have anything plugged in to the 410 from WMD, if we just take an output from the output of these faders, it's a 0 to 5 volt offset when we move the fader. And the Rample understands that 0 to 5 volt. I've got it set up to use that signal to change the sample. So if we take an output, no input, just an output, and I roll this fader, guys see that I just changed the clap sound? Let me roll that up a little more. Do you guys hear how that clap just changed again? Make it so we can turn this percussion sound on and off with the other sounds. We get a little bit longer cable here, and let's, whoops, I'm still going to need a longer cable. Okay, so now I can turn on the kick drum, I can turn on the open hi-hat, and I can turn on or off our percussion sound with these 3 switches up here in the upper left. So, oh, I put that in the, there we go. Okay. So if we switch up a little further on this fader, you hear that I've changed that sound again, a different clap sound. And if we go up a little more, we have yet another sound. So I've got those few different clap samples now, you know, that I can scroll through using this fader as the set is going, so I can kind of change the vibe up in real time by changing the sound. We can also just hit pitch here, and now I have on these 4 knobs, I've got individual pitch over each of these sounds, so we can control the pitch of the clap in real time as well. I can, you know, detune that clap and then change it. Then I could, you know, pitch this one as the jam is going. Can make that bass a little bit more exciting there. Bring it back up in the mix. Alright, so I also have a ride cymbal, or rather a few different ride cymbals inside of the Rample that we can trigger today. And let's go ahead and use my last golden shower sequencer to trigger these rides. I'm going to go ahead and put this into the input here, and then what we can do, actually, I've got a better idea. I've got it set up already for just a really standard 8th notes ride pattern to come out of the D&I Pro sequencer here. But the bonus about using the D&I Pro sequencer is I can put it into mute mode, and that will allow me to like mute the clap and mute the ride at any time. So really handy mute function in this D&I Pro sequencer. Let me get a little bit of a shorter cable here, and I'm going to trigger the ride cymbal here. And why am I not doing that? Because I put it into the wrong input. There we go. All right. Get my volume back up here. All right. So we've got a little bit of a ride going now. You all right? Can you guys hear that ride? I can change the sample that it's playing inside of the Rample the same way that we can change the clap. I just roll this fader up. All I need to do is plug in the output of this fader into the CV input of the Rample. And I've already set that up in advance. You know, you just go into the menu and tell it when you assign a CV input that it's to change the sample. I could have that CV input be something else if I wanted to, like change the pitch or the bit rate, but I find it really convenient to use it along with this WMD 410 to switch the sound. So check this out. Let me go ahead and let's just take that clap out for a second. So we're just focusing on this ride sound now. See, if I push this fader up, here we've just changed the ride sound. And we can do the same thing with the ride here that we could do with the clap. I've got control over the pitch here. So in real time, you can easily kind of change the vibe with that, you know, ride. Let's say that that's the pitch we're really comfortable with. I still have more different ride sounds if I just move the fader. You guys hear that ride change there? You can close the hi-hat a little more so that the ride kind of stands out a little more. We can change the ride again, drop that kick, just press up on this fader. Now I've changed to a different ride. We have the ability, don't forget, we can change that pitch. So as you're changing the sounds, you can kind of move these pitches and then find sort of a sweet spot, right? All right. So I really want you guys to get that in real time, that I can change either the tone or the sound entirely or the pitch of just about any of these sounds in the mix. And that's really, really important. There's no like master sequencer here to where like we're gonna press one button and all of these things are gonna change. It's just all sort of going in real time, and it's all so very malleable in that we have control over the individual elements of all of these sounds. So we can change between a few sounds, change the pitches and tonality of a few sounds, and also change the rhythmic pattern of these sounds in real time. We can turn any of these tracks on and off in real time, which is really important if you want to be the song mode. All right. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Sean is a great guy and been amazingly helpful my entire Eurorack journey. I don't think I would be this far along the journey without a lot of deep conversations with Sean at Massatron, and I really, really appreciate him. Yeah. Hey, we got Soup Au Jus in the chat. What's happening? All right. It sounds pretty bad. I don't know. I think it's all a matter of opinion. I think this sounds pretty good is the thing. But that's the beauty part. If you're into Eurorack, but like what we've got here now doesn't do it for you, then the thing is you would just choose different modules to make different, sounds, or different sequencers to generate that kind of, sound differently. This is very, very specific today in that it's, it's Dean techno. This is kind of like something that moves me personally. And I really like the way it sounds. All right, let's keep going. Hey, what's happening, Expectors? All right. One of the things that's really neat to do is to, now that we've got, the bass line, playing just a 6-note bass line, we can maybe pause a few things here, right? I can put this into mute mode rather. We can kind of get things, into a state here where the audience is, expecting a change up. And then when I bring the kick drum back in, I can pull out this reset cable so that we're getting back to an 8-step bass pattern. right. I'm going to mute some of these tracks here. And let's see if we can go ahead and get my last little melodic element going in with this mix today. See if I can't get this cable to stay a little bit more out of the way for me here. Yeah, cool. All right. Let me bring the volume down a little bit. What we've got here on the... Okay, let me go ahead and get that out of the way as well. Just real quick here with some more ties. All right. Cool. What we've got here on the bottom right is sort of like a little bit of a melodic setup. I'm really limited for inputs with this setup. I've got kind of a submix with the drums here, and I'm using the Synths black output as the main output module. So we've got one more input here, and I've got another, module down here, and a filter, and another, input on the Synths dual effects as well. So one of the neat things is the Sequence 8 here from Synth has 3 different outputs. So we can actually take a second CV output and we can route that into the quantizer. Now I've got the knobs set to the same, so the sequence that's coming out should be the same sequence that's being sent into both of these lanes of the quad quantizer module. What we can do here is I've already got these oscillators in tune, and let's make sure that they're still in tune actually. And let me sort of show you how I'm doing that. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and push stop real quick here. And for the kick drum, it's got a little a trigger button on it, and I'm running, let's see here if I can show you guys. You probably can't see, but over here behind all these cables and stuff, over here is I'm running Ableton Live on my Mac, and I've got a headphone out of my main master mixer here running into Ableton Live so that I can get this sound over here and look at it in a visual way, and also run my tuners and kind of make sure that everything is in tune. So if I take this kick drum here and I trigger it, I can see that it's currently triggering an A. And what I want to do is I just want to get this module also playing an A. So the easiest way to do that is we can just take the output, we can run that into the input of the output module here, so we'll be able to hear this module directly. If we go into the menu of this module, it has a built-in envelope, which means a built-in VCA, built-in envelope, which means that I don't need an external envelope module to use this. Really makes that super handy. But if I turn it off and bring our volume up, now I'm getting just a sustained pitch, which I can then attempt to tune to an A. And as long as these modules are relatively in tune with each other, then almost. Come on. Let's try here. Sorry, that might be a little bit loud, guys. I want. Alright, now I've got this module tuned to an A as well. So both the kick drum and this module are tuned to the same note. And that's really the only thing that matters here. As long as they're tuned to the same note, then they'll be in key when run through this quantizer together. Now let's go ahead and get the system going again. Often I need to do it twice. Let me see if I get this out of mute mode. What did I do wrong there? There we go. Okay, let's see here. So we've got these in tune with each other. Fantastic. So what I need to do is I just need to take the CV output from our quantizer and route that into the pitch input of our oscillator here. Turn our VCA off. All right. And And then we just need to trigger this module so that it knows when to sound. Let's see. And lastly, I just need to get an output from the filter into our master output module. There we go. Okay, what did I do there? CV. All right. See if I can get that an octave lower. Yeah. Stop the clock here and try to get this module 1 octave lower than it was. If that's possible. Let's see how that sounds. No, it's too low. Okay, we're going to go back up to the higher A. Cool. One neat thing about this particular module is that it has lots of different algorithms in it. So you can get lots of different tones out of this one. This is kind of like one of their wavetable algorithms right now. And instead of running it directly out of the filter, directly into our output module, I can route this actually into our second input of the dual effects module from Erica Synths. And then we can just take the output from that module, and route that into our main output. So now we've got effect that we can run on this synthesizer sound here, like a little bit of a reverb here. And that sounds pretty neat over the top of all this, right? We've got a filter here, so we can kind of mess with this as well. And if I sort of fade that sound out of the mix, right? Maybe bring in some of our other sounds. Maybe bring this module back to mute mode. So we can, yeah, all right. One of the neat things I can do if this sound, you know, our melodic layer isn't playing, is I can change the color. So when I bring it back in, it has a little bit of a different tone. And we can filter that a little bit with this wasp filter. A lot of resonance. Kind of start changing it between a high pass and a low pass filter, kind of get a different tone, which kind of tucks it back into the mix a little bit, allowing us more room to maybe add other sounds like this clap, right? There's kind of yet another tone that we can get out of that melodic sound, right? As we're changing between a high pass and a low pass filter here. Messing with the frequency a little bit, right? Kind of dial that in. Wasp filter also has a built-in level to it, so I can kind of fade that sound in and out as necessary, right? or just tuck it back in the mix in real time if we want. Let's not forget about our bass line up here. Just jam it away with an 8-step bass line. We can make it a 7-step bass line. Let's go. Tuck it back in the mix a little more. Bring that clap back. Bring that ride back in. You can get ready to do a little bit of a turnaround on the kick drum with these little switches here. In 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me do that again, but not talk over it so you can hear what I'm saying. Just kind of a little fun one there. I can also adjust that kick drum. Start building up a little more aggressive section, right? Start changing the pattern on our percussion, make it a little more busy, and make it more effective. And tuck the bass back. Now don't forget about the drum mixer, which allows us to fade in and fade out some of these sounds. Now while I've got that sound faded out that was just in, I can bring the effects off of it. So when I bring it back in, it'll be a little bit different. We can change the tuning on it, maybe change the decay on it. And 1, 2, bring it back. If I want that part, you know, that percussion part up there, to just play straight 16th notes, we can take our Euclidean sequencer and tell it to just play all of the steps. And let's change the bass line. In 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it's a 5-step bass line. The percussion's a little aggressive, so we'll start taming it. Change the amount of steps that it's playing. In 1, 2, 3, and change the steps. I also pulled the plug on the bass line, so we're back to an 8-step bass. So can you guys hear how we're just really just starting to ebb and flow with this now? We can make this this hat back into an open hat and bring the clap. Now it's a 5-step bass line. Go ahead and take a moment and check in with the chat because I know it's been a while. I want to make sure I'm not missing any important questions. No case is complete without a wasp. Yeah, I'm really into this one. It provides some really nice tonality. Absolutely. Yeah, I like the Dreadbox as well. I have, I want to say, the Hysteria module. I'm doing a lot of reshuffling. Yeah, I have two of these Hysteria oscillator modules from Dreadbox, and those are super, super awesome. All right. Hey, thank you, Lo. I appreciate that. Hey, thanks, Omri. So that's sort of the thing here, guys, is that, you know, once it's going, that's the thing. Once you are the song mode and that nothing is changing, you know, auto-magically, it's all just up to you. You guys might also notice that I don't have like my typical impact crash sound that I often like to use on like the downbeat of every like 8 bars or like every 16 bars. I find that that was kind of like throwing my groove off here, and that this setup is more just maybe about getting into it and just sort of feeling the groove than it is about, you know, waiting for that, you know, crash to happen every time. I'm gonna go ahead and just, you know, see if I can't just jam with the setup a little bit more. We'll just have a little bit of fun. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. Got different samples in the Rample, and one of my claps is quite a bit louder than the other ones, so I'll need to go back in and make a few adjustments there. There we go. Sidechaining absolutely fits my patching style, but unfortunately I just didn't have a way to get that set up in this particular system. What I've been doing to get sidechaining lately is I've been using the Zadar from, I don't know how to say it, from Zaok, from Zoc Industries or whatever, and I've been using the Zadar to generate a little envelope, kind of like a sidechain looking envelope, and I feed that envelope into an Erica Synths black VCA, which allows it to sort of open that VCA, and you know, I'll trigger that envelope with the kick drum rather. So every time the kick drum happens, it triggers that sort of sidechain envelope to sort of move the volume on the VCA to get that sort of sidechain pump. But I just didn't have the space in it for this system. I might be able to work that out at some point, because sidechaining is definitely something that I'm about, you know, for sure. All right. Now, one of the things that we can do as well, since we're running this sequence H through a quantizer, is we can actually change the notes of our bass sequence in real time as well. It can be a little bit intimidating, and maybe with a little more practice I can be better at it, but we can literally dial in a completely new vibe to the bass line by just changing a few of these notes. Let's try another one. We've got a little bit of a different bass line happening now, right? And I can bring that back to a not polyrhythmic, but you know, less steps. So a little bit of a different vibe than what we started with there. Obviously, you wouldn't be talking over it and you would just be jamming, but you get what I'm saying. Surprisingly, a lot of things to keep, you know, in your mind at the same time. To have to remember, you know, what's controlling every single part of the system and what you need to get at. Accidentally pulled out one of my cables there. Need to get the clock reset now that I've done that. But basically, I hope that you guys can get the idea that I'm trying to get across today. Let's see. Yeah. Which is basically that depending on the modules that we choose, and depending on how we have the ability with those specific modules to tweak those modules in real time, is how we get to become the song mode. what's another great question, Window Looker? The Rample or the Erica sample drum for drum and bass aim-in breaks? Which would I recommend? That's a really easy one for me. It's the Erica Synths sample drum, hands down, no problem. I just got that module in, actually. I had been gassing for that one for quite some time. As a sample maker, you know, sample-based modules are a very large part of my workflow personally. So I've been, you know, trying a lot of the different options for sample-based modules. I really like the interface on how the Erica drums, sample drum allows you to really see everything that's going on. You don't really have that same kind of interface with the Rample, and I find that from the stance of just intuitiveness in using the module, the Erica Synths sample drum really excels there. Also, we can sample into that module, whereas with the Rample, you can't sample into it. You have to do all of the work like beforehand. And the slicing mode on the Rample just doesn't really seem to be like as robust and amazing as the sample mode in the Erica sample drum. And you certainly don't have built-in effects to this to the Rample either. You can play 2 stereo samples in the Rample instead of 4 mono samples, which is kind of like a nice, you know, give and take maybe. But really, for the ease of use, if I had to like pick one or the other, I would probably pick the Erica over the Rample. I mean, but you do have 4 slots inside of the Rample where you've only got 2 inside of the Erica drums. So at the end of the day, there's definitely, you know, a trade-off, you know. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, Wall. So for a break, we can just sort of pause in 1, 2, 3, and sort of change the bass line at the same time while we bring our kick drum back in, right? Sometimes I get a little bit of like a skipping sound when I adjust these knobs in real time to try to find a different bass. I'm not sure if that's like user error or if that's, you know, just how the module works. But definitely having some things that we can get to really quickly without much thinking to help the patch kind of keep its movement and ebb and flow, I think is really important. Like being able to just change the ride symbol on the fly or the clap on the fly by just, you know, scrolling to a different place in the fader and hoping it lands someplace nice. And then over here, you know, being able to turn these tracks on and off. I definitely think that if I can get some more practice in on this set, you know, that I'm going to continue to get better at the ebb and the flow and the evolution of these, you know, sounds together. That is a wonderful suggestion and most appreciated, Omri. I'm definitely going to need to look into how to achieve that. That sounds fantastic. Thanks, Grant. I appreciate that. Hey, we got Per Sound System in the house. Thanks for tuning in. All right. Hey, what's up, Audible Video? And that's another great question. How would I add ratchets or 30-second notes intermittently with the hi-hats? Let's see here. Currently, none of my sequencers that I'm using here have any ratcheting abilities, which is certainly, you know, something that would make something like this a little bit more robust and interesting. These are really pedestrian and simple sequencers as far as I'm concerned. Just really simple 8-note trigger sequencers on the Golden Shower, and then just really simple Euclidean sequencers here from 2HP, and then the Dot from D&I Pro is just a 16-step sequencer as well, and none of these allow me to do like ratcheting per se. That would be really awesome for sure. But hopefully you guys can hear that even with a small system like this, that I'm still able to get quite a bit of different tones, especially with this WASP filter. And using the braids module actually allows me to have access to several different algorithms. Like I don't need to use this one sound only. Yeah, some type of pad sound. You are so right, Window Licker. I really need that. Whoa, whoa, whoa! We got window licker with the dot can do ratchets. Oh, thank you for that. I am really going to need to figure out how to do that. Absolutely, that's a great suggestion. All right, I really appreciate that. We got audible video and we got window licker teaming up, helping me out there in the chat. Thanks, you guys. Right on. All right. So I do believe we are going to start getting ready to wrap it up here. We've been going for just about 2 hours. And you know, I've pretty much shown you how I'm using these modules and what modules specifically I've chosen to put in this setup. So if anyone has any more questions or fantastic suggestions, now would be a great time to get those into the chat, as I think we're going to probably go ahead and get ready to start wrapping it up today. Hey, thanks, Subachu. All right. All right. Hey, thanks for the support, OneRes. Right on. Thanks very much, Marizo. Right on, thank you. right, you guys. I do think we are going to go ahead and get ready to go ahead and call it for today. I really appreciate everyone tuning in and hanging out with me on these live streams. I'm really excited to get to share this stuff with you, kind of like as I'm discovering it at this point, in my journey. I know how to use a lot of these modules, already, but I have, this big tendency to kind of overdo everything, as you might have noticed, and maybe skip some steps along the way from like maybe getting more in tune with my inner ability to control these modules and get my ebb and flow down. Whereas, when I'm getting into my big system and stuff, it really takes lots and lots of preparation before I'm able to do anything, even remotely as jamming as this per se. Whereas, like, for instance, the way that this is patched up right now, I can go ahead and turn this off and I can come back tomorrow. I can flip it on, press play, and immediately start jamming techno. So if I was to practice this enough, I mean, this is something that I would literally, be able to take out of the house, which is certainly, not something that I can say for my large system. It's very difficult, especially for someone like me, who has a tendency to overdo things, to sort of just pick down to the very base amount of modules that we would need. For instance, yet again, I want to stress, it's not like I have a filter for every module here. I literally only have one filter in this case. I don't have a lot of effects that I can route everything to, so I can't put effects on like all of my drum sounds. I don't have a huge mixer with an auxiliary send, all that kinds of stuff. So this is just one way to pick different modules, get them in a case, as long as it's something that you have, that somewhat control over, being able to turn the tracks on and off in real time and being able to tweak those sounds in some way in real time can allow you to become the song mode. All right, I'm just going to check in real fast and make sure that I'm not missing anything else in the chat. Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Window Liquor says, I love all the little synth communities that have popped up the past couple years. Everyone is so nice and helpful. Yeah, I really agree. Lockdown was a pain, but it definitely got a lot of people collaborating and communicating online with each other that probably wouldn't have otherwise. And some of those, sort of communities that were really sticking to themselves have kind of spread out and become a lot more sort of global with these live streams as well. I've really been enjoying that and that sense of community, with each other. All right. So we are going to wrap it up today. It's been about 2 hours, techno at 10 a.m., and we will be back next Sunday with another live stream. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do next week, but I do know that next week is actually the 1-year anniversary of me doing these live streams on Sunday. I will have been doing them every Sunday for a year. Next Sunday, I've come a long way. I was barely able to, keep my cool when I was just starting because I was so nervous. I still get really nervous every time, the day before these streams when I'm setting up, the night before. Sometimes I don't sleep super great, but it is what it is, and I've been pushing myself to continue to do this. It'll be 1 year next Sunday. A lot of you have been here with me, through this full journey, and I really appreciate it. If you've joined up along the way and you've been hanging out on these live streams, I really appreciate you being here as well. All right. So yeah, so 1 year live stream anniversary next week. Yeah, I don't think we're probably gonna do anything. Just letting you know. All right, cool. So techno and Eurorack. This is an awesome setup, and I'm definitely gonna keep practicing it. Maybe see if I can't refine it a little bit more. I've got this little bit of room here where I can squeeze in a few more modules, and a little bit of room here where I can maybe squeeze in some modules. I appreciate you guys hanging out, and I appreciate the tips as well along the way, you guys. All right, so until next time, thanks for watching. All right.